And unfortunately, the folks that are the guinea pigs and quote on the bottom think that, and for some of it may be temporary. They'll get themselves out of poverty. I know I got myself out of poverty, and it was not easy. That's the thing. It's not impossible, but it's incredibly difficult, and you have to do like the jobs of like 50 people to get yourself back in a place where you're actually financially secure. But there's a lot of folks who think they're temporarily poor and resonate with millionaires and billionaires because they think that that's they're just temporarily poor.
That's
It's
the path they
okay.
need
They're
to,
just
yeah.
and they also hate other poor people. So they'll vote for things that are totally
Yep.
against their interests and other poor people's interests. They'll vote against things that are actually going to save their life and actually help their kids and benefit themselves because they think it's temporary. And I think that goes into a deeper psychological issue that's going on with them of thinking this is temporary. I'm not going to be, and it's like on one hand, yes, think positively. That's good for your health. That's good for your mind. But also don't crap all over someone else who might not get out of it. And I
Maybe when they're growing up, they grow up in a situation of poverty, and they felt in their core afraid of that, and their environment or the people around them didn't enable them to have the coping mechanisms to deal with that. So they grow up chasing not being poor and squashing anything that looks like poverty so that they can get away from that fear, right? And I just found that really interesting.
No, absolutely. I have met so many other Black and brown folks who hate other Black and brown folks and make it very clear that they hate particular kinds, meaning poor Black and brown folks. And I've had those conversations with folks, and I'm like, what? Are you what? And they'll go on these incredible tangents about how we're in our own way, and if we did things this way and we did things that way, never looking at the systemic oppressions that are still very much in place, that very much keep people locked in the boxes of the poverty that they're in, or the exclusion that's happening to them. They never look at that. They're like, oh, there's no systemic anything. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? Are we looking at the same world? Are we reading the same newspapers? Are we actually like paying attention to the same things? And I think sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're very, very, very focused on other news things that shall not be named. And they like that kind of.
Another piece of that is, and people don't even realize that, as I was talking about, like the things that we're taught and the things that are over and over again repetitively taught to us, from our parents and from the members around us, from our churches, from whatever situation, that's going to embed in your psyche. And that cognitive dissonance. And when you can't figure out why you believe what you believe and then try to justify that.
No, absolutely. And I with because I come from two very disenfranchised groups of folks, in this life, I'm very much trying to break that generational trauma. And when I tell you, some of my older aunts and uncles, or even my mom, my father passed when I was 14, but like my mom's still around. When I tell you that they are so anti that, they're so, because they're holding on to the trauma that they've had their whole lives, and that's all they know, and that's all they want to deal with. And I'm just like, but wait a minute, there's so much more that we can be
There's so
doing,
much more,
and more, that so that we don't pass it on to I call my nieces and nephews my little babies because they're so cute. And so I'm like, we don't want to pass that on to the little babies. We don't want them to deal with the same stuff. We don't want them in therapy at 40 dealing with things from 30 something years ago because they never had the space to ever do that.